are good. They know their friendlies that they get to play are good in terms of quality opponents. And so they don't care. They don't care about the Olympics to the detriment of the rest of the world. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mindful Athlete. This is going to be part 2 of my post-Olympics discourse videos. If you haven't seen part 1, I will link it up above. In that video, I talked about whether the women's football competition at the Olympics should change to a U23 format, similar to what we see with the men. In this video, I'll be talking about the other conversation that got a lot of attention after the Olympics ended, and that was what is the best women's football league around the world. And the reason this got a lot of attention is because after the US women beat Brazil in the gold medal match, a lot of people, I think it was pretty much mostly Americans, were saying this result essentially proves that the NWSL, which is the National Women's Soccer League in the United States, is the best league in the world. The reason being, the majority of the women on the US team, as well as many Brazilians, play in the NWSL. Therefore, because the gold medal match was heavily represented by a lot of NWSL players, this means that that is the best league in the world. Now, this conversation kind of died down a bit. Obviously, the gold medal match ended a couple of weeks ago. And so people had sort of moved on from this idea of what's the best league in the world until it reared itself back up again this past weekend when Arsenal played the Washington Spirit in a friendly on Sunday, and then Chelsea played Gotham the next day on Monday. And both of those matches, the WSL team won. Arsenal beat Washington 2-1. Chelsea beat Gotham 3-1. So naturally, you had the WSL fans immediately going online saying, this is supposed to be the best league in the world, and you lost to our two teams who just had their first preseason game. We haven't played in months, and we beat you guys who are in form and in season. I mean, look, it was an obvious response that was going to happen the second you claim to have the best league in the world. I think that NWSL fans or fans of those teams have a little bit of an excuse in that both of those teams were missing their Olympians, especially Gotham. I think they were missing like 7 of their normal starters. So I think like NWSL fans felt like it was a little bit unfair that English fans were trying to bring up or trying to make fun of the fact that they lost. But even regardless of all of the back and forth that happened, I saw some comments of people saying that, oh, American fans can't take jokes. How come they can't handle banter? Why are they getting so upset? And why are they so sensitive? One thing I noticed, at least online, and if you are an NWSL fan, please correct me if I'm wrong. The things I noticed most online is that there's way more banter and fans making fun of each other on European WOSO, Twitter at least, then I see NWSL fans bantering with each other. I don't know if this is like a cultural thing. Every week in the WSL, there are fans going back and forth with each other, like especially Chelsea and Arsenal fans are often always going back and forth with each other. And so I'm thinking maybe it's a bit of a cultural thing. I actually read I think I came across a blog, and what this person was basically saying that in English football culture, the language that's used in banter and chants intentionally play on and exploit opposition's biggest insecurities. It made me actually think of a tweet that ended up getting deleted. So Foudies is just a company that sells women football jerseys, and their CEO and owner, Helen Hardy, I don't remember the context, but she basically said that European football fans, like women's European football games, should match the atmosphere that is at Angel City's games in the NWSL. And they're saying like the Angel City crowd it's like fun and it's like a party and it's family friendly, and opposition fans will be high-fiving each other. I don't know. It makes me laugh because that's like unheard of in anywhere else. Like, why would you be high fiving the opposition, the opposition fan base? Well, that's what she was saying, and of course, she got ratioed, and I think she eventually deleted the tweet because I can't find it anymore. But again, it just speaks to like this different football culture that exists in North America or in America, and so maybe that is why this like banter, I honestly see it as banter that was going on between the two fans talking about what is the best league in the world, got a little bit tense. Now, this question about what is the best league in the world, I know a lot of people will say that there's an answer to this, but obviously this is just opinion. This is just what people feel. In fact, Sean Nahas, who coaches the North Carolina Courage, which is a team in the NWSL, actually tweeted this out. And he basically said, no one can argue anymore that the NWSL isn't the best and most competitive league in the world. Other leagues are great, but the structure, competitiveness each week, and the talent in the league is where it's at. It will only continue to grow and get better. Development can happen here. Now, obviously, this is a very subjective conversation. People are going to have their own opinions about what is the best league and what isn't the best league. So I think that, look, there are going to be different factors that people use to determine what makes the best league in the world. For some people, it is the style of play. Other people look at competition. And now, competitiveness is an interesting one because a lot of the people who typically really love the NWSL and agree that the NWSL is the best league in the world often use this idea of competitiveness, or you could also say parity in the league. And so I think for many people, the NWSL is seen as a league in which there's a lot more parity. So from top to bottom, the gap between talent, skill, quality is a lot smaller. In the NWSL, what's often said is any team can win on any given night, or going into every season, you really don't know who's going to win. And that isn't necessarily something you can say about European football, at least in the top leagues. So for some people, they look at that as boring, it's not exciting, it's very predictable. And so to them, they can't ever see those leagues as being the best league in the world because to them, it doesn't look competitive. But then for people who are fans of European football, I find that the argument tends to be more around style of play. They acknowledge that, yeah, the bottom of their leagues probably aren't good compared to the bottom of the NWSL league. But the top teams in Europe are better than the top teams in the NWSL because they play a better style of football. A lot of people really value style of play. And unfortunately, many people don't like the way Americans, North Americans play football. Like that is just a reality. There is a perception that Americans play very transitional, fast, direct. They don't value possession as much. And for many people, they don't like that style of football. They don't think it's real football or they don't think it's attractive football. And personally, I think it makes a lot of sense that if what you value in a good league is the style of play, then if there's a style of play you think is ugly, then you're never going to think that that is the best league, even if it's competitive from top to bottom, right? That's never going to be enough. Now, this whole conversation about what is the best league in the world really and truly is kind of like, oh, it comes up every now and then. I know Sean Nahas feels like the gold medal match proves that the NWSL is the best league in the world. But like, no, I don't think you can use that as a reasoning. For starters, many people don't consider the Olympics as strong as a tournament as the World Cup. So why is it that in the World Cup when Spain and England are in the finals, that doesn't somehow mean that Spain has the best league in the world or England has the best league in the world? But when the US and Brazil meet in the Olympics, which is a tournament that people think is inferior to the World Cup, this now means that the NWSL is the best league in the world. I don't necessarily agree with that logic. I know a lot of people joke and say that the Spanish league is a farmers league because of how dominant Barcelona is. But let's use Sean Nahas's tweet as an example. US and Brazil were in the finals. And so therefore that means that this proves the NWSL is the best league in the world. Spain won the World Cup. Not only did Spain win the World Cup, but Barcelona has won 3 of the last Champions Leagues. And in addition, the last 3 Ballon d'Ors have gone to Barcelona players. So these are all Spanish players and Spanish teams that I'm talking about. And so why can't someone who is a fan of the Spanish team or a fan of Barcelona say that this proves that that is the best league in the world because it has the best players playing there? I think for me, what this whole conversation just shows is that it is up to you what you think is the best league in the world. That's how I feel because I don't think there's a way to prove it. Turns out there's actually a website that has tried to quantify this using results from matches to rank teams and leagues across the world in terms of who is better than who. So Opta Analyst has actually done this. Showing right here are the Opta Power ratings. As you can see, these are ratings as of August 9th, so they're quite up to date. There are 5 leagues that are being shown on here, and these are considered the top 5 women's leagues in the world. You've got the English Women's Super League, the National Women's Soccer League in the United States, the Premier Division Feminine, which is in Spain, German Women's Bundesliga, which obviously is in Germany, and then, of course, the Feminine Premier League, which is in France. The figure basically shows that the WSL and the NWSL generally look like the top leagues in the world, followed by Spain, Germany, and France. Now, I think a lot of people probably agree that these are the top 5 leagues in the world, but where you put them in order, I think is where a lot of people are going to have different opinions on that, especially the NWSL, because in this figure, it's essentially showing the NWSL as being either the first or second best league in the world. Again, this is going to bring up questions of how can you rank leagues when the teams never face each other, especially with the NWSL not having something like Champions League. Now, Opta Analyst uses an ELO-based rating system, which essentially ranks teams based on their performances across many matches. So over the years, Opta Analyst has analyzed over 2 million games, I think they say since 1990. And basically, they use the results of those games to come up with this ranking system. So basically, whenever there's a match played, there's an exchange of ELO points that take place. And however many points the winning team gains, that same amount of points the losing team loses. And the more unexpected the result, the more points are exchanged. Now, in terms of how they compare teams across leagues and in different countries, when a team from one league plays a team in another league, or a team from one country plays a team in another country, not only is the team ratings taken into account, but also taken into account is the league rating, the country rating, and the continent rating. Look, it's not a perfect science, obviously, and Opta Analyst has acknowledged this, that there are limitations, especially when you're going to have many teams never face each other ever. And yet we have a system that's ranking who's better than who. They've never faced each other. It's not perfect, but Opta Analyst does say this is the most effective approach. And the reality is they have analyzed millions of games, so there is a science to it. It's not subjective. And based on that system, the NWSL ranks fairly high. Now, if I go back to this figure, one of the things that stands out is the parity that exists in the NWSL. In the NWSL, top to bottom, the teams are more closer together in quality and competitiveness than you see in other leagues. So, for example, the bottom team in the NWSL on this figure is the Utah Royals. They only have 9 points after 16 games. But yet, based on this figure, they are still ranking better than most mid-table to bottom-table teams in the other leagues. But then at the same time, the top team that's showing here, which is the Kansas City Current, are lower than the top teams in Europe, which again goes to the point that I was making before, that a lot of European fans hold, that the top European teams are better than the top NWSL teams, but NWSL teams as a whole are better than the mid-table to low-table teams. A lot of people do feel that way, but there's also the argument about style of play. And so Opta Analyst has also looked into that. Now, in this figure, it is basically mapping passes per sequence by speed of play. Now, generally speaking, the more passes per sequence you have and the longer you hold onto the ball per sequence tends to indicate a more slow and intricate style. Basically a team that values possession-based football a little bit more, build-up play, being a little bit more intentional about making the right plays, as opposed to just get their head down and just go. And so that's why it has slow, intricate style on the one end, fast and direct on the other end. With the fast and direct style being more this transitional based football that I was describing before, that many people feel the NWSL plays. But similar to the other figure that I showed before, I think people would be surprised to see where the NWSL lands on this. And as you can see right here, of course, this is looking at it by league. This is not looking at it by team to team. But overall, as a league, this data shows that there's nothing to suggest that the NWSL is any more transitional of a league than any of these other teams. In fact, the German league, which is the Frauen Bundesliga, and the Feminine D1 Feminine, which is in France, actually seem to play more transitional and fast than the NWSL. I think there's some bias that's happening where people have in their mind that the NWSL only plays a particular style of football, and the league that I watch and prefer plays another style. But if you look at it when it's mapped out, there's nothing to suggest the NWSL makes less passes in a quicker amount of time than any other league. However, I will defend the people a little bit, but I'm going to play devil's advocate with myself and say that there is a little bit of an understanding of why fans feel this way. And that'll be shown in this next figure. In this figure, I've now added the top European teams to it. And as you can see, it paints a little bit of a different picture. Here we can see that, yes, even though these European leagues as a whole don't play any slower and more intricate than the NWSL, the top teams, which, let's be real, are the teams that most fans watch more of the time, those teams do play much more slow and intricate than the NWSL as a whole. So if you are a Barcelona fan, a PSG fan, any of the fans of the teams that I'm showing here, you are watching them week in, week out. And so for you, yes, you are right in a sense that what you're watching is a lot more slow and intricate than the transitional fast-paced style that you see in the NWSL because your specific team plays like that. But if you were to sort of take off the lens of only focusing on your team and watch other teams in the league, especially mid-table to low-table teams, you'd probably realize that the style that they play isn't actually all that different from the NWSL. But nonetheless, there is a little bit of an explanation for why European football fans feel this way. And as a result, this influences their opinions on what is the better type of football. Especially in Europe, there is much more value placed on slower possession-paced style of play. And if that is the style your team plays, you're basically going to speak in extremes and describe your league as a league that plays this style. And therefore, this league is better than another league. Look, at the end of the day, whatever you think is the best league in the world is going to be based on whatever you value. But I will say what is my favorite league in the world, that would be the WSL, the Women's Super League. My favorite team is in the WSL, and typically the league that you love the most is the one that your team plays in, right? And I don't necessarily have any loyalty to NWSL teams, so I can watch it and I can enjoy it. But the league I love the most is the WSL. So does that mean it's the best league in the world to me? Yes, but who cares if I think it's the best league in the world, right? Truly, it is just for fun. And I think if you keep the thought in mind, like I said at the beginning, that it is subjective and it's up to you, whatever you think is the best league in the world, then any of this banter shouldn't really upset you. Anyways, I'm curious to hear from you guys. If you watch this, let me know what you think about this conversation around what is the best league in the world. Do you think the Opta analyst ratings that I showed you have merit? Do you think this is a fair way to rank leagues around the world? Or do you think it's just based on people's opinions? Or do you think there are other factors that can be used, like World Cup winners, etc., etc.? Let me know. Leave your comments down below. Very curious to hear your thoughts. And if you do think there is a best league in the world, also let me know. I want to hear from you guys. What is your favorite league that you like to watch? Anyways, thanks so much again for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.